I was going to read over this big script that kind of explains where I've been at for the past several months. So, you know that big script I mentioned in my video about 2 weeks ago? Well, I think now is a good time to read some of the parts from it. I'm sure some of you know that the community around Siege has kind of been on fire lately, and I think now's a good time to share my 2 cents on what I think has so many people really frustrated, and also why I think it's valid for people to complain during a time like this. So here are the sections I've divided the video into. Just keep in mind, this is my first time trying a critique video style like this, so I'm sorry if I'm a bit unclear or convoluted in some sections, but I'm really doing my best because this stuff is pretty important to me. So let's just cut to the chase. There's always been a bit of tension between the casual and competitive player base of this game, and this little trending hashtag has definitely brought that into the spotlight for sure, but I've always seen that division between these two groups to be a little stupid and short-sighted. No offense, but as far as I can see, both the casual and competitive communities obviously want the same things, right? We all want less bugs and hackers, more consistency from the game, and more transparency from the dev team, be it for different goals, right? So one side wants to consistently win, improve, get better with their team, and I guess the other side they want to have fun with their friends, right? They just want to kick back and enjoy a nice game of Siege. And I will say, though, the biggest problems with the game usually end up affecting the people who put the most time and effort into it than the ones who don't really care if they win or lose, as long as they generally have a fun time. I'm not saying the sweatier people are better or deserve to be heard more than people with less time on their hands. Everyone deserves to be heard, but I mean, the competitive crowd just takes what happens to them in-game way more seriously, and when glitches and hackers just hamper their results day in and day out, it gets frustrating. But those issues are not just exclusive to people who want to win, because even if you are a more casual player, just trying to have fun with your friends and have a good time, I mean, sometimes it feels like you can't because the nature of the game changes every time you load in and something glitches, or someone's cheating, or some other variable messes with what was intended to happen. It's a surprise, but not a very welcome one. I think these issues don't just happen to one part of the community, I think it happens to all of us. And from what I've read in comment sections, Twitter threads, Reddit threads, it's not just a competitive issue anymore, it's everyone. So I think cheaters are the main thing that really sparked the Save Siege movement. There have always been, complaints with issues of the game, and it's no wonder. Bugs and glitches hamper the experience of Siege a lot, but this is one of the few issues that make playing Siege with the sole purpose of winning or being competitive virtually impossible, unless you want to lose your damn mind, right? There are others, but when someone is in-game sprinting as they're shooting with an aimbot and wall hack, or literally flying over the map, right? I mean, it just completely blasts anyone's motivation to continue playing. And in my experience, and many other people's experience, I'm sure, that snowballs. First, you play a hacker for a game, so you want to get off for the day, right? And you could probably deal for the odd hacker here and there. We've all been doing it for years. We've been dealing with hackers here and there, and it's fine, because we love the game, so we keep coming back. But then you run into another few hackers tomorrow, so you want to get off for the next few days. Then you run into another hacker when you come back after a few days, and you want to get off for weeks, for months. You get the idea, right? It snowballs. And if you stick around this vicious cycle for years, like so many of these players who are tweeting out, Save Siege, I mean, their frustration becomes a little bit understandable. Cheats and hackers are not new. Every season they come in waves. But when an update drops, it just makes sense that hackers should have to get banned or watch their hacker friends get banned because the anti-cheat gets updated with the rest of the game. Then the hackers realize they have to go back to the drawing board, update their cheats to get around the increased security of the new patch, and then maybe they can come back towards the end of the season to really start putting the pain onto regular players. But for some reason, even the amount of cheaters seem to spike when a new patch drops, along with the amount of bugs and glitches. I just don't understand, why. It seems like the moment a big update releases, it's like there's a dinner bell for these hackers to just go out and completely destroy the beginning of people's seasons. And this is the complete opposite of what should be happening. It's just been feeling like the hackers have an open door to come and go as they please when it comes to cheating in ranked, and maybe in casual, but usually they want to do it in ranked. It just feels like the anti-cheat is not being updated, and that's disappointing. Okay, so I really did want to talk about operator balancing, but I don't want this to be a 10-hour video, so if you guys are actually interested on hearing my opinions on operator balancing and what I think Ubisoft could improve on, leave a comment down below, I guess, but there literally is not enough time to talk about this stuff, so I'm just going to move on to the next section. Like I said in my last critique video, yes, we used to constantly make improvements, and there were really big ones too, like lighting was a huge one, and one-step matchmaking with Operation Health was another favorite of mine. Here are a bunch of other ones that I really liked, but I think for several updates now, the recent ones, the updates just haven't been making substantial changes. We've just been getting, you know, the typical new operators and new map release. And a lot of these changes have been disappointing at best. One thing that's really disappointing about how Rainbow Six updates play out is when one thing is fixed, another completely unrelated thing breaks. It reminds me of that Scrat skit from Ice Age where he's trying to plug in those leaks, right? And every time he plugs one up, another one just seemingly pops out of nowhere, right? And he just can't keep up with the leaks. And eventually, you know, he floats away or whatever. The most well-known example of this I can think of just off the top of my head was the reoccurring Clash glitch where she could shoot and kill someone with her gun out while being completely shielded on the victim's screen, I guess you could say. And this issue was fixed, but it also came back multiple times, and one of the last times the issue was fixed, the issue still came back. But now, after the fix, IQ could for some reason go completely invisible. It was some bug related to her claymores. There are many other examples of this kind of weird domino effect when it comes to Siege and bug fixes. If you've been around Siege for a long time, then you know that these old problems tend to come back, and when they come back, they usually bring other seemingly unrelated problems along with it. Now, I'm not a coder, so I don't know how something like this can happen, but I am a player, and as a player, I know that dealing with recurring issues after they've just allegedly been fixed, or even worse, issues that come up as a result of these fixes it's just frustrating. And it leaves us confused and skeptical whenever people say the issue's been fixed, because we don't know if it can just come back or bring even worse issues along with it. And like, I'm sorry to the devs, I genuinely am. I'm sure they want this game bug-free and working so they can just work on something else, or just at least stop hearing complaints about bugs in the game. And obviously they can't. For whatever reason, they just cannot squash a lot of these problems for good. But let me ask you this. Does it make sense for a player to get shot at by a fully extended bulletproof glass shield, die, and think, well man, I just feel bad for the dev that has to code this? I mean, realistically, no. Realistically, I don't think that is a reaction that makes sense. I think the only thing any human would feel at that point is just, you know, frustration. They're mad that they played a situation as well as they can, and some completely bogus factor that is out of their control is just ruining their fun. Now, again, I am not saying go harass a dev to release your frustration. Please don't do that. It is, without a doubt, one of the worst ways to handle this whole issue. But at the end of the day, yeah, the players who get screwed over by problems like this, they're mad. And most of them are probably bottling up that frustration or complaining about it on the game or social media to their friends, and it makes sense. It's justified to be mad. It's human. I wouldn't expect anything else from a person because that's just how we're wired.
Oh my goodness!
Now, before I start this section, I just want to say I'm completely criticizing Bikini Body's way of thinking, and I have nothing against him outside of just that. Don't go attacking him. The last thing I want right now is drama. Please, for my sake, let's just think of this as one idea versus another. Okay, so very quick summary. For those of you who don't know who Bikini is, he's one of the more influential members of the Siege space. Some would even say him and his active community have single-handedly brought us two really big changes to the game. Removal of ACOG from Ash, and the addition of ACOGs to the boss G. So Bikini's basically an adamant supporter of Ubisoft and all things related to Siege. I mean, this guy at the very least loves to show his support for Rainbow Six. And of course, he'd be the first person to come to their defense when something like Save Siege catches the public eye. Usually I'm pretty indifferent to what an individual opinion on something like this is, but these ideas are no longer just his. He's really influential, and because of that, his ideas spread like wildfire to other people, so I figured it was worth trying to reach some common understanding between the Save Siege community and the people who religiously defend Ubisoft's treatment of Siege, like Bikini.
I don't even have the desire to play Siege because I know
how bad it is.
The state it's in. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really normally would be down, but I know you wouldn't be.
Yeah, I saw actually, speaking of Siege, what's that guy's name? Bikini Body or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
I saw Bikini Body, and he just constantly tweets at other games saying they're trash and constantly says how good Siege is.
He's a big Siege advocate.
I don't know if he's...
Which there's nothing wrong with it.
I don't know if
no,
he's trolling. Okay, he's 100% serious?
No, he's serious.
Is he just like completely blind to the terrible state? He's like basically... He roasts other games because they're in a bad state. And he's blind by the fact that he thinks Siege is in a good state. I don't know. It's weird.
So
his tweets are strange.
It's naive to be like, yeah, Siege is dope. I literally played it, like I said, like a couple weeks ago. And 2 out of 3 games on EU at Plat 1 Diamond Elo were cheaters.
So I think the irony in this is, while he defends Ubisoft's development team to the absolute death, asking for people to please understand and give them more time, Bikini goes after Overwatch devs day and night for all the things that Siege players will aggressively complain about to Ubisoft, and it's just interesting to see that even this guy who's so compassionate and understanding to one game can just be so brutally critical and harsh to another game development team. And I mean, this just goes to show, when a company does not do things properly, the human thing to do is lash out or give a negative response, right? To get frustrated. And I'm not a defender of Overwatch. I don't even think I have 100 hours played on that game, and I haven't even touched the game in several months. I know Overwatch is in a really rough state right now, but I mean, when you go after a game for not listening to its community, poor balancing, poor esports management, and then never say a word of that for Siege, I mean, I feel like your bias is just as clear as day at that point. Like, I love this game too, man, and everyone who's ever said Save Siege loves, or at the very least once loved the game. But do you love the game enough to criticize its flaws and let it become better for admitting its flaws? Because that's genuinely a really hard thing to do, but it shows that you really do care to criticize something that you are passionate about. So there's this video, right, that I watched about a year ago. It really hit a nerve when I first watched it, and I thought about its relationship to Siege. And it's actually an Overwatch critique video by a North American Overwatch pro, Seagull, and it's titled The State of Overwatch. And in this video, Seagull solemnly explains why the game he once loved has lost its spark for him. And when I originally listened to this video, all I could think about was, wow, this sounds a lot like Siege.
Today, I want to talk about Overwatch, state of Overwatch, what it's like to play. And I just have one simple question for anyone who's clicked on this video. Am I the only one who finds Overwatch to be really frustrating these days? I personally cannot remember the last time I logged off of Overwatch, not because it was late at night or I had to go run errands or anything like that. It was just because I get really frustrated at the game, or maybe I just had a really tilting game and ranked. And I don't know, I love this game. Don't get me wrong. I'm a former professional player. I stream this game all the time. I have played this game for thousands upon thousands of hours. But there is just one very consistent trend in my Overwatch experience. Good games are really good, and bad games are really bad. And I think this is the fundamental issue behind Overwatch currently. We need to figure out a way to normalize the experience a little bit more, so that way when I click on the Overwatch rank button, I don't have to have a coin flip on whether or not I'm going to have fun. And this is coming from a person who's a professional streamer, a former pro player, right? I can't imagine what the average player looks like who only has like a couple hours a day to play this game. Do they even want to do that coin flip anymore, or do they just want to go load up an MMO or Battle Royale or some other game? Because personally, I'm kind of exhausted about it. I'm a little bit burned out.
And you know, for someone who dunks on Overwatch, another game with a passionate fan base, passionate devs, but claims to love every atom of Siege, I think the irony in that is Overwatch and Siege both have some serious common issues that they need to sort out. And I just think it's really naive and arrogant of us to think that we're doing almost everything perfectly, and that there's nothing to learn from the success and failure of other games. I think we can learn how to improve Siege from other games. Of course, I want to keep everything that really makes Siege, Siege, right? The tactics, the unique guns, how the abilities work so well with each other, and you get what I mean, right? Just everything that makes this game unique. But how great would it be if you could mod Siege the way you could mod CS, or you could make custom games and aim training maps that allowed you to play Siege in a completely new way, with new assets made by a passionate modding community instead of just using the clunky custom game maker we have now, and Terrorist Hunt, which has been around forever, and they even renamed that to Training Grounds. It's almost as if they're trying to sell Terrorist Hunt to us as the aim training mode, when we've been asking for an aim training mode while Terrorist Hunt has already been around for years. I mean, how great would it be for our hardworking pro players and casters if Siege Esports was as legitimized and organized as CS's? How great would it be if we had a theater replay mode so editors could make cool montages? I mean, I could go on for quite a bit. But my point is, we can borrow the best of the best from these other games while still keeping Siege unique. If only some of us could just be a little less prideful and a little more open-minded, we could get one step closer to really unraveling all the potential that a feature-packed Rainbow Six game could have. But unfortunately, these goals as of right now are just incredibly unrealistic, because even with how bare bones this game is right now in features compared to other AAA titles, we're still having problems that ruin much of the player base's experience, and we should not be adding more weight to this already really shaky foundation. So after listing down much of my complaints on the game so far, here are my proposed solutions.
Operation Health
2.
So this isn't my favorite plan. I think an Operation Health 2 might improve things for a little while, but my problem with this solution is I just feel like an Operation Health 2 would only delay some of the problems with the game before these major long-lasting issues just come back to frustrate long-term players all over again. So, you know, things like client-sided objects, poor hit reg, netcode issues. I mean, we've had an Operation Health before, and it really did some good work, but the things we did not manage to fix with the foundation of the game did eventually come back to haunt us, and I don't want to be stuck in this vicious cycle of updates and Operation Health periods. So if they were to go through with this one, it would show that they really care by drastically changing the direction of the roadmap one more time, but I just don't think it would hold up long term. So that's why I think the second solution might actually be the one to change Siege forever. I think the solution that people are waiting for without even realizing it is a sequel. A clean slate where Ubisoft can really focus on making the core foundation of the game mesh together and work really well with their ever-expanding DLC cycle and constant player base growth. Because I think from what we've seen so far, we're just pushing the limits of what this game can really do before just spilling its guts and breaking all over the place. And it's no secret that this game was built off of scraps from a canceled Rainbow Six game and using the Assassin's Creed engine. I mean, that cannot have been the easiest of ingredients to work with. And there's this saying, right? Rome wasn't built in a day, and I don't think that Siege can fully be realized in one game either. I think all those features I mentioned before, plus the stability and consistency of a true AAA game, would easily make Siege a game to be reckoned with. So many other games have truly gotten to shine through their sequels, and eventually I would like to see Siege head down this path. And if this isn't necessary and Ubisoft genuinely has all of these issues under control, then that's awesome. I'm completely happy to hear that, but I've explained why I've been skeptical about their changes and fixes before, so for the time being, I'll just be patiently waiting and seeing what solutions they have to offer. Only time will tell.